Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to Explain It to Me. Molly's got a little dance ready. Today we're talking about episode 7 of The Rings of Power, titled The Eye. With me, as always, is Molly. How are you?
I'm good. Cozy Sunday vibes over here.
And our resident Tolkien expert, Ashton. How are you doing, Ashton?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. How did you like the episode?
I liked it a lot.
Dive right in.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I'm continuing to enjoy trying to figure out like what adjustments they're making to the story that I already am familiar with. You know, like we were talking about last time. You know, there's always changes when they adjust to a different medium, like a TV show, and it's just kind of fun to figure out what exactly they are and aren't changing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely have some questions written down. Molly and I put a list together beforehand. But Molly, what did you think of the episode?
I liked it. We waited a day or two to watch it. We didn't watch it on Friday, but I remember seeing people say that it was like kind of slow, and obviously after the episode before that, it was not going to be as exciting, but I thought it had some really good character moments and like developments in the story. I'm a lot more interested in Durin's stuff right now. And yeah, I don't know who that crazy priestess is, but I want to know why they're so mean.
Yeah, they were mean. I felt the same way in the sense that, yeah, it was slower than the last episode. And going into it, we had heard some people say like, oh, this one's not as good. And I mean, I guess I didn't like it as much as episode 6, but I still liked it a lot. This one had one of the most emotional moments of the show for me, I think. But so now that we're back to all the various storylines, Ashton, what is your favorite storyline to focus on in this series so far?
I mean, everything with the dwarves has been my favorite in this show. It's just it's the portrayal of Durin, like the younger Durin in the show, is so good, and like every scene that he's in, I feel like he steals it for me. From him lying about the table earlier to, yeah, his emotional scene with his father in this episode. Like he's just been fantastic the entire way through.
Okay, and Molly, you would agree? Is that your favorite storyline of the bunch, or just in the past episode?
Just for this episode, I think, because like I like him a lot. I like his wife a lot too. Like I love all of their scenes together. They have really good chemistry, and yeah, I don't know. I'm just I'm ready for his dad to like die because he's being a big, huge bummer right now.
Well, then let since both of you love that one, and I really like the dwarf stuff too, and I segmented my questions out into the various storylines. So, yeah, this seems like one of those cases where they are going to compress the timeline, and I'm wondering if in the books, like, did Durin the Third have the usual animosity towards the elves, and did Durin the Fourth just have to wait him out? Like, when the timeline isn't compressed and he's like, I can wait a couple hundred years until my dad is dead. And honestly, that's not going to happen. Or obviously that won't happen in the show. But
well, so in the books, they're like, it's a little different because we don't have the details on like which dwarves were kings in this time period, and it's kind of actually weird for there to be two different dwarves named Durin at the same time based on the book interpretation, because the dwarves, Durin's folk, that clan of dwarves, have a tradition that every once in a while one of their kings will be so like their forebearer Durin that it's actually him reincarnated, and they'll name that dwarf Durin. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for two of them to be named Durin at the same time, but at the same time, for the show, they've had this whole thing of they have their secret names that they only share with their family. So maybe that's where they are only named Durin, if you know if they fit that, or something like that. I mean, there's ways of explaining it. It's also, I mean, maybe he and his father both are just like different aspects of Durin, and they're both worthy of being named that, and that's why. But Elrond kind of hints that maybe his grandfather was also named Durin. So I don't know, maybe that's just a tradition of the dwarves of Khazad-dûm at this time period, that their kings are always named Durin to outsiders or something like that,
Yeah. In the books, was it something where they would name a baby Durin, or did they wait until they did something cool and they were like, "Ah, no, we'll change your name."
I don't think that it was really specified, like whether it was like something where they could just tell at like infancy, like, oh yeah, this dwarf's gonna be Durin for sure.
This one looks exactly like Durin.
I think it was probably something that was a name that was given to them later in life, like when they became king or something along those lines,
The secret names just makes me think of Usador.
That I thought exactly
Magic Tavern.
He was like, Elrond, I have secret names, and I was like, names of such power that if they were to be uttered.
Dale's Sparkle Sleeves.
I thought he was going to share his name with Elrond, because I got the sense that he was calling Elrond his brother in that moment, and then he basically straight up says that to his father later.
I mean, Elrond stopped him from doing that. I mean, I think that's what he was about to say, for sure. But Elrond stopped him, assuming that they would be able to finish their project. But then, bummers, they weren't able to.
So, Durin the Fourth, the Prince Durin, he's the one that eventually builds the door, right? The door of Durin to Moria.
Yeah. I mean, presumably, yeah.
Because is that why you speak an Elvish word to enter? Because he was friendlier with the elves.
Yeah, in the books they go into the fact that at the time when Celebrimbor was making the rings, that Eregion and the dwarves were on really good terms, and so they actually created that gate specifically for the trade that was happening between the elves of Eregion and the dwarves.
Cool.
And Mithril was used in creating that door, because that's where they get the glowing script that can only be seen in moonlight. Yeah, Thildine.
So does that? Are we setting things up for Durin the Third to be killed or to die soon? Because or is he gonna find common ground with his son?
I don't know. maybe not.
What do you think is going to happen?
I mean, I think that he probably will die, but hopefully he has like a moment where he and his son kind of find common ground. Like maybe his son's going to go into exile for a while or something because he removed his crest and told him that it wasn't his anymore. So maybe he's going to be banished or something, and we'll get to see some Durin adventures elsewhere, and then he comes back when his father is, ill or something.
He took his little metal bib away.
Yeah. That seems like that's why you don't name a baby Durin. If they're gonna upset you down the line, you don't want to have to take the name back. But it's too late. Like you named that baby Durin, and now it has to be a great king eventually.
Maybe that's just what it says on that bib thing. It's like, "Hi, my name's Durin," in Khazad-dûm.
That kind of sucks though, because like you literally can't make a name for yourself if you're like Dwarven royalty. It seems like.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what they're doing, where they're always naming their kings Durin.
Well, I guess that's why they have the secret names.
But I mean, if he's only the third and the fourth, I don't know. It's
Maybe this is a new line of Durins. Short line.
No, it's Durin. Doreen, the
dwarf.
Doreen.
So the end of this episode, when we saw the leaf go all the way down to the ends of the mines and everything, and we got our first look at the Balrog, which I assume is Durin's Bane, the Balrog. I feel like I've had you explain this to me before, like just for Lord of the Rings sake, but how did that Balrog get there? What is it, just chilling? Like, what's it up to?
So when Morgoth was defeated in the war, he had a varying, depending on what book you're going off of, varying number of Balrogs that were in his service. In Tolkien's original writings, there were a lot of them, and then in his later notes, there were just a handful. So generally people kind of go by the later notes. But when he was defeated at the end of the war, the Balrogs all scattered and hid and found places to hide or were hunted down by the Valar. And so this one in particular evidently hid in the roots of the Misty Mountains, which either there were tunnels that went from Morgoth's stronghold all the way to the bottoms of the Misty Mountains, or he actually just, I was about to say flew, but that would start an entire other debate. He went all the way to the Misty Mountains and then got down there somehow.
Well, in Middle Earth, fly can mean just run really fast. So
true. The size and shape of Balrogs is a point of copious discussion.
I thought it was interesting that it matched very much what we recognized from Lord of the Rings, since there is this whole like iffy legal debate about how close they can be.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where they, based on what's in the books, it makes sense for them to be able to move through hallways and things like that were in Khazad-dûm, that were like dwarf sized. So it makes sense for them to actually be more like person sized if they want to be, or at least to be able to like slip through openings like that. I mean, they're made of shadow and flame, so maybe they can just slip through things like a cat, and like just get through really easily. I don't know.
So this Balrog has been hiding there since the First Age, is presumably going to be the downfall of Moria at some point during this series, and then it just stays hidden there again for another 2,500 years until the Fellowship shows up.
Well, after it brings about the downfall of the actual kingdom of Khazad-dûm, it doesn't exactly go back into hiding. It's kind of like staked its claim on Moria at that point.
Okay.
And there are expeditions of dwarves that go back and try to reclaim it, but they inevitably get destroyed either by the Balrog or the orcs that come to live there as well.
I was just wondering if this is actually the most cowardly Balrog in the world, because it's just been hidden there for thousands and thousands of years. Like,
I think it's just that the Balrog doesn't have a whole lot of like motivation to do anything else. I mean, their purpose was to serve Morgoth, and Morgoth's gone. They don't have the same ambition that Sauron has.
And they would follow Sauron, I would presume.
Well, they're kind of equals to Sauron because they're both Maiar. So maybe Sauron with the ring could like convince a Balrog to help him, but he would have a hard time getting it to actually be subservient to him, probably.
Huh. Okay, so Balrog's on the... go ahead, Molly.
Does the Balrog mind if the orcs are there with him?
It kind of seems like it tolerates the orcs being there. Like from what we see, especially in the movie, like we get the sense that the orcs are terrified of the Balrog, and it just kind of comes around and probably just like squishes them when it feels like it. And so they just kind of keep their distance, but they, just kind of stay away from it.
Yeah. They have the same boss. That's about it.
Kind of, yeah.
It just seems like it's getting bored down there, and it needs some way to let out some stress, so it just goes up and pummels some orcs and then goes back to sleep. I do think it's interesting, this whole the Mithril helping heal the elves and all that. I think we talked about how that's not really from the books or anything, but I do kind of like this idea that the dwarves delve too greedily and too deep, but it's kind of like it's partially on the behalf of the elves, and that seems like it might not be a very fair thing to say about the downfall of Khazad-dûm when Saruman says it. Yeah,
that's kind of that's been kind of a discussion online about the show too, is hoping that they don't make it into a, the dwarves decided to help the elves, and so then they got themselves destroyed on accident. It's like, it is more compelling if it is actually because of just a natural tendency of dwarves to, continue to be industrious and mine and make things, and like it kind of gets away from them.
Yeah. So what do you think of Durin the Third and his, like, he seems really, really hesitant to mine Mithril even without the elves.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious why he's so hesitant. Like, does he know something beyond what he's letting on? Because he seems like really against this whole Mithril mining project, even though there are a lot of reasons to try it. So yeah, that's kind of curious. I mean, maybe he's just being extremely protective of his people and doesn't want them to do this dangerous project, but I don't know. It seems like it might be something more than that.
Yeah, it seems
I-
like he just doesn't want the whole entire mountain to collapse, but yeah, it seems like there's more to it than that.
I liked the argument he and Durin had about how he stifles his son's ambition unless it, like, he won't let me do anything unless it comes from your head first. So maybe he's just like resistant to his son kind of spearheading this thing.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, also, speaking of Durin, we got another sort of Easter egg in one of those scenes where we saw an axe in the background, and everybody online seems to think that that's Durin's axe, which was like a relic that the original Durin was actually his axe that was kept in Khazad-dûm at this point in time. So maybe that's what that was, because it seemed like it was kind of like on display.
Cool.
In the background of that one scene.
Nice.
I liked the humor between Durin and Elrond. Just like they have such good chemistry too. It's like it's just refreshing to see them still kind of joking around a little bit. Like he was joking about being winded when they had their little contest.
Yeah, I kind of had actually thought that when they had their contest before, it seemed like Elrond kind of gave up on purpose, and let him win. So I was curious when that was going to come up.
Also, did Durin are we supposed to think he has asthma? There was like that whole story about him as a baby, and then he was like really winded when he was with Elrond.
I don't know. Maybe that's how they can tell when a baby's supposed to be named Durin. Maybe Durin famously had asthma.
Yeah. It's just like they all have the bad lungs from breathing in whatever they're chipping away at constantly.
But actually, I guess maybe that's like, when they have that like a vision of a new royal dwarf having like this future where he saw like the vision of him becoming a great king. That's how they know that he should be another Durin. I don't know.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, do either of you have anything else you want to talk about from the Dwarven storyline?
I don't think so.
All right.
I thought that the whole thing with the leaf was pretty cool. How it actually like they got proof that the mithril would actually do something. I'm still curious how exactly that works because that's a new invention of the show. But yeah, I also really want someone to recreate the scene of the leaf falling all the way to the bottom of Moria with a bucket instead. Like from the well.
Like Pippin.
Yeah. Falling all the way down to the bottom.
Yeah.
And just pissing off the Balrog.
That makes
Balrog's
a lot more
just down there.
sense to as to what would actually wake up a Balrog, not a leaf, but a bucket.
Well, even a leaf,
about
like
people throwing things through his windows.
Very light sleeper.
Yeah.
But the bucket was like, no, this cannot stand.
Yeah, I'm really curious though if that's going to be the extent of what we see with the Balrog this season, or because like it seems like a lot of work for them to go ahead and like create that special effect Balrog without having plans of using it more. But at the same time, this is way too early based on the book timeline. It's way too early for Durin's Bane to actually wipe out Moria. So
yeah,
I think they just showed us that to be like, look who's down there. Uh-oh.
I feel like it's going to be a future season thing. I don't think it will happen again this season. But I mean, they've basically committed to doing 5 seasons of this show, no matter what. So
yeah, so I guess it'll happen at some point in the show.
Yeah, so I think they're just getting it ready and being like, we all know you know what's down there, and here's just a little reminder that we haven't forgotten.
Yeah,
and it's coming. That feels like a good segue into something else that popped up in this episode from Lord of the Rings. But going over to the Southland and all that with Galadriel, I was surprised that she mentioned Celeborn. I was under the impression that they just hadn't met yet.
Yeah, that was a big surprise. That's, again, an invention of the show that he was, went to battle and was lost. So, obviously he's not, like, actually dead forever. Like, he's in the movies, he's in the books later, you know. That would be a massive change in the story for Galadriel's character. And like Elrond's character, because he marries their daughter. But
Mhm.
like, I'm curious where they're going to go with that. Like, if they're going to have him have been, you know, captured for the last 1,000 years, or if he actually got killed and then he comes back, sort of like Glorfindel or something. Who knows?
What do we know about his history?
I mean, not a whole lot. Like, we know how he's related to other elves. He's, I want to say, a Sindar elf. And he doesn't really do a whole lot else. He's on the White Council later with, you know, Gandalf and Galadriel. That's pretty much
That's it.
I mean, pretty much.
So they had some wiggle room that they could just kind of make something up for his history.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, they could definitely invent some backstory for him beyond what we already know, and it wouldn't necessarily be too crazy.
I kind of like the idea. I don't know if this isn't their intention, but I like the idea of Galadriel being like, yeah, he was lost. Haven't seen him since then, because she like had stuff she wanted to do. Like, she wasn't ready to really settle down yet maybe. So she's like, yeah, I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, she's been running around, like, you know, the frozen north and all sorts of places looking for Sauron this whole time.
Yeah, but that's like her obsession. So she's like, husband, schmusband. I don't know. I got a mission.
Well, yeah, it's interesting that they haven't mentioned him until now. They made a big deal about her brother and that being her driving force to find Sauron, but now she's bringing up Celeborn. So yeah, I'm interested in all of that, and why she wouldn't have had him as part of her motivation from the start.
Yeah.
There's seems to be a lot of characters in this world that are lost, and people just assume they're dead.
Well, I mean, to be fair, when Morgoth was defeated at the beginning or the end of the first age, like, most of the like elven kingdoms were sunk to the bottom of the ocean. So a lot of people were just like gone, you know.
Were they all just like on the coast, or were they islands?
It was a whole big section of the continent called Beleriand, which was
okay, that
pretty
sounds familiar.
Large piece of the map. It's basically where everything in the first age happens, pretty much. And then it's kind of interesting, because then it means that, like, whatever happens in the second age, it's kind of like, it explains why there's not ancient cities everywhere. You know, like, elves have been here for thousands of years, but the reason that you don't see, you know, ruins everywhere or ancient cities that have already been established for thousands of years is because the place where all of those cities were is now at the bottom of the ocean.
Oh my god.
So
Tolkien just loves to sink places.
He does, yes.
I just got to get rid of this.
Well, when you don't have like lots of different planets and locations to go to, you gotta kind of
yeah,
make your own clean slate somehow.
Well, it's kind of an interesting like reset button too, because it lets you say, okay, now the second age is happening, and you know, humans are kind of coming to the fore, and they're setting up completely new settlements. They're not building on top of elven ruins most of the time, because they are all, you know, sunk to the bottom of the sea, but still they're able to set up their cities in geographically like advantageous places, and nobody's lived there before because it wasn't the coast before, you know.
So yeah, let's go on to the rest of the Southland story. We have Tarmiriel, who is blind now, and they're all going back to Numenor. I'm really interested in the fact that they're, like Molly said, they're just assuming Isildur's gone, which fair assumption, but like we know obviously he's not, and so he's just going to get left behind.
No one thought to follow the horse.
Yeah, the horse is knows. Like basically being Lassie of like, I'll show you.
Yeah,
and they just let the horse go.
Well, I mean, I think that it's gonna go find Isildur, you know.
Yeah,
sort of similar.
And no one followed the horse. Like Elendil could have gotten on the horse and be like, "What is it? Take me to him."
Yeah, where's the trouble?
Exactly. So I'm interested to see assuming Isildur is just left behind on Middle Earth, and Numenor already said they're going to come back, but what's he going to do on his own?
Well, I mean, they did explain that like they're leaving a group behind to search for the rest of their
Yeah.
missing people, including Isildur. So I'm guessing he's probably going to fall in with them. The rest of the Southlanders are going to Pelargir, which is a Numenorian colony. That's the place where in Return of the King, it's the place where Aragorn takes over the pirate ships with the
Oh,
army
cool.
of the dead. That's Pelargir, is like where that happens.
Okay, I was going to ask about that.
So it's like downriver from Gondor, what will eventually be Gondor. So
is it affiliated with? I think was it Dol Amroth? Is that the other people that are in the book Return of the King?
That's another sort of like fiefdom that exists within Gondor later on, but I don't think that it's a thing yet at this point in the story. So,
all right. So that's cool though to know that Pelargir is like now I geographically know what's happening.
Mm-hmm. So those Southlanders are going there to probably repopulate a Gondorian colony that was previously, or maybe there's already people living there and they're just going to like join that colony. But it does kind of they've established now that there are Numenorian, I think I said Gondor, Numenorian colonies in Middle Earth. At least former colony. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how they handle that. But that is something from the books that the Numenorians established these like coastal colonies in Middle Earth, and they would visit periodically. But like to the like low men, as they were calling them earlier in the show, of Middle Earth, the Numenorians are almost like demigods or something because they live for an extremely long period of time. They're technologically advanced. They show up in these boats that can sail in the ocean, and the people that live in Middle Earth are like, what's going on? Like to them it's a kind of crazy thing that the Numenorians even exist.
Mm-hmm.
So at least in the books, we'll see how it happens in the show.
Yeah.
Well, I like the idea of them. So they're going to go back to Numenor, but Tarmeliel's like, this isn't over. We're going to come back to Middle Earth, and I can really see how even Elendil was upset at what happened. And I'm sure he'll stay on her side, but I can see Alfarazon really easily turning this around and being like, you just lost a bunch of people fighting some other war. You failed completely, and you want to go back, and maybe like she has a hand in starting to build Gondor and all of their little cities.
Well,
and
I kind of have a feeling
being back, like pissed that that's happening.
Yeah, I kind of have a feeling that Elendil might end up being kind of against the idea of going back, at least for a little while. Because right now he's assuming that Isildur is dead and that their, expedition into Middle Earth is the reason why, and he kind of like was blaming Galadriel for the whole thing. I think that he might end up being kind of like against the idea. And if we remember earlier in the season, his daughter was against them going to Middle Earth. So I think when he gets back to Numenor, either she's still going to be against the idea and be like, hey, I told you so, this is why. Or maybe she kind of comes around and ends up helping him decide to, I'm assuming at some point they'll find out that Isildur is in Middle Earth waiting for them to come back, or something along those lines. But I kind of think Elendil might be kind of not on board, so to speak, for a while.
Yeah, I could see that too. I'm kind of hopeful that Isildur has his own little adventures on his own for a minute, just trying to survive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved the scene. Well, first of all, Tarmeriel is another like really captivating character, and I loved her stuff with Galadriel, where she's like savior, pity, elf, like. But then they have this like almost like the Predator handshake. That's what I got. That was implied of like, we're gonna do this, and Galadriel's like, yeah, we're gonna do this.
Yeah, I thought that moment was really cool too. Also, Galadriel in this episode was really. I really liked what they did with her character in this episode, because it was like she got kind of taken down a notch because her whole plan really literally blew up in everyone's faces, and so she's kind of, and that was happening right after she kind of got schooled by Adar about how she was like really sounding like not a good person.
Mhm.
And so it was interesting to hear her be a little more like subdued and wise in this episode instead of so aggressive.
Yeah. And I liked her stuff with the kid, Theo. Is that his
Mhm.
name?
Mhm.
Like the two of them kind of like having their own little side story conversation. Like she gives him the sword and everything. That was cute. I liked
Yeah.
that.
She definitely
Well,
had
I
some
like.
like Galadriel from Lord of the Rings-esque words of wisdom for Theo.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I liked them both working through their like this is my fault syndrome of
Yeah.
her being like you gotta what was there was a line I meant to write down that she said each war is fought from within and without, that like there's the physical fighting, but within each person they have to fight with themselves to not become a complete villain like Adar was accusing her of doing, but to look at the heart of a person and be like, Theo, you didn't mean for that to happen. You did that because you were trying to save people, not blow up the whole countryside.
Hmm.
uh, but trying to get him to let go of that guilt, I thought was a good scene.
Yeah, that was really neat. And I've seen a lot of criticism online about Galadriel specifically in this show, and people criticizing that she seems like a different character than from Lord of the Rings. And I think it's just because it's earlier in her arc, and we're
Yeah.
seeing things like this happen that are evolving her towards the character that we're familiar with, which is cool to see. I like that it's a that we're not just getting a carbon copy of the character we already knew from the get go.
Yeah, I mean that's how it should be. The elves aren't the same people they were when they were born, I
Hmm.
assume. They change over the course of thousands of years. It's just like Yoda. Yoda is different in the prequels than he is in the original trilogy,
Hmm.
and that's
Yeah.
because people change
Well,
slowly, but they do.
too, like she doesn't even have her ring yet. Like there's a lot still that's got to happen for her, and so like the version of her that we see in the Lord of the Rings movies is like there's so much has happened to her after
And
all this.
we talked about it last week, but I love how much more I'm understanding of what she went through in the first and second ages, and it makes that moment where she passes the test in Lord of the Rings. I'm like, all right, I understand why that was such a big deal now.
Hmm.
What else happens in the Southlands? I think the only other big thing was Adar talking to the orcs and stuff, and then they literally showed the text of the Southlands burning away to be Mordor. So
That was cool.
that that is it is officially called Mordor now. And they
Yeah.
said something like, "What should we call it?" And he didn't name it, but I was kind of like, would Sauron be upset that Adar named his realm,
Yeah.
or because they don't seem like they ended on good terms?
Hmm. Yeah. The only
Sauron wanted to
other
change it, but it had already stuck. It's too late.
Yeah. The only other thing that happened in the Southlands story this episode was Halbrand getting injured and Galadriel explaining that he needs elvish medicine, which kind of made me kind of be like, well, okay, but earlier we were talking about how there's not really elvish medicine because they just heal from everything. So it made me think like what exactly is elvish medicine, and like are they going to play him a song to make him like happy and he'll be fine, or like
They're gonna plant some more of those seeds in his wound, and
then
then
light it on
play him
fire?
a song.
Arandir's like, I got this.
Yeah. That's their only solution for getting stabbed.
They just need Athelas. That's all I know. Get some
Hmm.
king's foil and you'll be good.
Oh yeah. Also, fun fact: the seeds that they set on fire and everything, that's the same flower that's on the Rohirrim, uh, like
Oh, cool.
the graves in Rohan in Lord of the Rings.
Oh.
The
Symbol Luna,
Yeah,
something like that.
Symbol Muna. I think that's what it was. But the seeds are specifically the same plant.
Oh, cool.
That's cool.
So they're going to Eregion. That's where Celebrimbor is, and Gilgalad.
Yes. Yeah, she's
And
taking Halbrand to Eregion, which for anyone who is subscribing to the Halbrand is Sauron theory, that would make sense on how he gets there, I guess. But I still am not convinced on that.
I'm not either, but like things keep popping up that I'm like, But also, so he needs elvish medicine, so they're going to ride across the continent on horse like he's been grievously stabbed. And
I guess.
And he's like, "Shake it off. I'm out of here. I can do this."
I mean, right after that, we saw him just like walk out, like, "Yep, okay." And then, I mean, when he got on the horse, he looked like he was in some pain. But yeah, I don't know. I guess that's the plan.
He's just putting on a brave face. But it like if that's fine for him and he doesn't show any like that, that's another thing where I'm like, that's a little suspicious, Halbrand, that you can just shake off a wound like that.
And also, he got wounded like completely off screen. Like we didn't see what happened to him, and he was just found on the road. Yeah, there's definitely some sort of suspicious things going on with his story for sure. But I don't know.
That was one side of this episode that I wish we got to see a little bit more of Arondir and Bronwyn and what happened to all the people. But I think that was also the point, to keep that tension up of, we know where Theo is, but we have no idea if the rest of his family survived.
I do want to see how many more times they can fake us out about Bronwyn being dead.
Yeah.
That's happened a couple of times now.
Yeah, to be fair, she seemed fine too. She had those seeds burned into her, and now she's walking around just fine.
True.
So maybe everyone just has magic plot armor in this show.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if we get to next episode and Halbrand kicks in the door of Celebrimbor's little office, he's like, "You know what we need is some rings."
Then
Like,
we'll know.
Then we'll know.
Yeah.
We'll get into predictions for next episode and all of our who is Sauron and who is the stranger in a second, but we should talk about the Harfoot stuff, which I still really enjoy the Harfoots. I missed them last episode, but I've always loved the Hobbits and the Shire and everything. Like, they feel like the heart of Middle Earth, and even though I think the Harfoots are a little bit brutal and willing to just leave people behind, I still really liked their scenes.
Yeah, I enjoyed their part of the show quite a bit this episode. The also getting to see the stranger do more magic. Also, I don't know, anytime that they use any of the, Tolkien languages, I'm just kind of like, it pulls me into the story. So I always love hearing them like use the actual Elvish words and that sort of stuff. So that's always
Is that when he was casting that spell on the tree?
Yeah. Well, and also the thing with Elrond saying about, instead of saying goodbye, saying Namarie, that sort of thing. Or like when Galadriel was talking to her horse in the previous episode. Those sorts of things just make me immediately sort of nostalgic for the original trilogy and the books. So,
yeah.
I feel like the Harfoots they need to communicate a little bit better, because they were like, maybe he can use his magic and fix this tree. And like, he did, but because those kids got in the way and like just happened to be stuck under like the part of the tree that fell down, they just like shunned him out of town. And then the next morning they're like,
get out of here.
The next morning they're like, oh, look, he did it. Great. Yay for us.
Also, talk about some bad luck. That like the place that they were going on this giant road trip to get to just so happened to be the place that a rock from Mount Doom flew literally like ages away and happened to land on that one grove.
We're like east of the Anduin, right?
Yeah, they're basically like maybe just south of Mirkwood or Greenwood the Great. So I mean, they're pretty far away from Mordor.
Oh, that's right. They did say that. Oh, so wait, so are they west of the Anduin, or is the Greenwood that big? I need to pull up a map. I should just have that on our StreamYard thing.
They're basically just very far north of Mordor.
I agree with this.
Okay, I see. Yeah, we were saying the same thing. It's like, if he's doing magic, give him some space. They are constantly all up in his business, and he's trying to like heal his arm with ice, like back off. And then he's trying to revitalize a whole tree. You don't have to be right underneath it. Everyone take a step back. You don't know what's going to happen. It's not his fault.
I don't know how long he's been with them at this point, but I feel like by now he should know a few words in Basic or English or whatever we want to call it.
Well, he figured out a few because he had that conversation with her about him being a peril.
Yeah. I'm just like, use your words.
Yeah, true. It's like, okay, you figured out like words like peril, but you haven't figured out words like
Back up.
away.
Yeah. Or like, oops, sorry, this will all be fine in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. But maybe he didn't know. I don't know how much
Yeah.
he
Don't touch my frozen arm. Like, I guess he was in kind of a trance or something at that point.
Yeah. Any new thoughts on who he is? Like it's got to be a wizard at this point.
I mean, it's either a wizard or Sauron, or it's someone that we don't know at all. But I guess timeline wise, maybe it could make sense for him to be one of the blue wizards, because they showed up ahead of the rest of the wizards.
Oh.
Depending on which notes you're going on. Some of the time, Tolkien wrote that the blue wizards arrived with the other three. Sometimes he wrote that they arrived beforehand, around the same time that Glorfindel was sent. So,
I
And
mean,
that makes sense to have a wizard in the show, but not one that there's plenty of wiggle room on, since we know so little about them.
yeah,
mhm.
not Gandalf. This is poor man's Gandalf.
Yeah.
Gandalf for the casuals.
Yeah. I hope he is like just a blue wizard, because I feel like they've really been hinting, or they started out pretty heavily hinting that he might be Sauron with the way that he showed up. But
Mhm.
I think you're right. Like we need a wizard.
Well, I mean, it is also kind of curious why like the cultists are following him around.
Yeah.
Um, I still kind of think that he's going to end up being Sauron, and that he's somehow like lost some of his memory or something like that. I mean, Adar talked about how if Adar can be trusted, he told Galadriel that Sauron made it his mission to try to heal Middle Earth for a while, which in the books Sauron did actually act like he was going to go like turn over a new leaf and be a good guy after Morgoth's defeat. So I mean, maybe that's kind of what we're seeing, but the stranger with the Harfoots doesn't seem to be like trying to trick them. He seems to actually be confused.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Would
I
that be
like-
how a wizard would arrive to Middle Earth, though? Would they be confused and like, how did I get here and what is this place? Or would they know what
Possibly.
their mission is?
I mean, possibly, because the wizards, before they go to Middle Earth, they're Maiar. They're like powerful spirits, and then they have to take on this role of a wizard. Their powers are severely limited. They're all of a sudden having to deal with things like being hungry and tired, and like things that they have no frame of reference for. And it in some of the notes, it sort of described like Gandalf's recollection of before he went to Middle Earth is kind of hazy, because it was like him in another life,
Mhm.
I guess even when
So-
Gandalf the White comes back, he's like, "Oh yeah, I was named Gandalf. That's fun." Like he had to remember some
Mhm.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, maybe, but I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
The magic that the cultist lady uses, what do we think they are? Or who do we think they are?
I mean, they could just be like human sorcerers, because those are mentioned in Lord of the Rings. Like one of the things that Tolkien writes as a theory of what the Blue Wizards could have done is that they could have gone and started sorcery cults, and things like that. Like the Witch King of Angmar is a sorcerer. Like there are people that can do magical things besides the Istari. So maybe it could just be like some humans that have learned how to do some magic-y stuff.
Yeah. They're just like super mean about it though. Like they didn't know who the Harfoots were, and they're just like, whatever, I'm gonna set your whole camp on fire.
Just being cruel.
It
And so-
definitely it was almost humorously quickly how that happened too, because
Yeah.
it was like, okay, I'm gonna put your torch out and then light your whole town on fire. And it was just all of a sudden like a light switch going off.
I mean, they were being kind of greedy about like, oh look, the stranger fixed all of the trees for us. Let's pick every single apple and plant we can find and haul off with it.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
maybe
what
they
they
were
have
just
to
really
do.
hungry from walking all that way.
Sure. But
I-
yeah,
I-
how quickly they all of their stuff just was turned to ash. I was like, oh no. But
Yeah.
I like the little group that ends up going off to find him in the end. Like I was
Yeah.
excited to see those specific members together.
Well, and presumably we'll get to see them actually interact with like humans. So I don't know if they're going to end up going to like a Bree-esque kind of like community, and getting to see kind of like hobbits interacting with humans will be interesting.
Mhm.
If they speak the same language, even, we don't really know.
Mm.
So yeah.
It definitely sounds like they're setting things up to the point where they're protecting the stranger from the cult, which I've seen Jesse calling them the cult of Melkor, whatever they are. It definitely seems like the cult is out to hurt the stranger. Where at first I was like, maybe they're trying to track him down for their own purposes, which I guess they still could be, but they're setting it up to the Harfoots need to protect him.
Yeah, or at the very least they're like going to warn him that like people are after him. So yeah, that'll be interesting. I mean, who knows? Like if the theory that he's Sauron ends up coming true, maybe they're just trying to reach him so they can unlock that part of him or something, like
Yeah.
remind him who he is or something.
Or maybe they know that he's a wizard and they're like, that's a threat to Sauron coming back and we're going to try to take him out.
Could be. It
Is
seems
this-
awfully targeted. Like there's a lot of things that would be threats for Sauron besides just like old
we
dude
got to
that fell
kill
out of the
that guy
sky.
in particular.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So is your gut still saying Stranger is Sauron?
Yeah,
Is that
that's
your
kind of that's
favorite?
still what I'm kind of thinking, but I'm not like sure of it. I'm still very open to the idea that I could be completely wrong.
And so there's so much evidence to point towards it, so I do get it. I'm having a hard time figuring out how this person goes from like an amnesiac with the Harfoots to let me teach you how to make rings, but I guess it's
I-
possible. And I
I-
like the humble beginnings of it all.
Yeah, I think I like the Halibran theory a little bit better just because he's so much more mysterious. Well, he's not more mysterious than the stranger, but like there's been so many instances where we're kind of like, oh, that's weird that we don't know how he got wounded or how bad it is and like why he's still okay. And also, I think it would be fitting for Galadriel to be like, no, I've been helping him this whole time. Damn it.
Mhm.
Well, both arguments have that element to it that I like of the you feel bad for the Harfoots who are just trying to help someone, and same with Galadriel. I do think it's weird, and this is not a Halbrand thing. It's just kind of a Tolkien thing that anyone comes back to a kingdom and they're like, "Hello, I'm your king," and everyone is just like, "Oh, thank God, we've been waiting for you." Like same thing with Aragorn. Just how quickly everyone got on board with Halbrand. It was like he just walked up and he's like, "Yep, I'm the king that was promised," and they're like, "Huzzah!"
Well,
I just
I
think it's a
mean,
little fast.
yeah, to be fair with the Southlanders though, like the dissident group of Southlanders all went off to go join the orcs and got killed. So except for that one guy, that one old dude that's
Oh yeah,
still
Waldreg is
like
still around.
Adar's hype man. Um
I do like that Waldreg is still around because he seems like one of those characters that'll pop up, and you'll just be like, "Ugh, someone off this dude," and it'll finally happen at the end.
yeah.
He seems like he's set up to be a good and annoying character.
Maybe he'll become the mouth of Sauron.
Oh.
Ooh.
Since he's used to going around and, speaking for people and stuff.
He was
Mouthing off.
Yeah, that's the one.
He was a black Numenorian, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Is
he was
that-
supposed to be a Numenorian, but also it's unclear, like, if he's like functionally immortal, like the Nazgul, as
Mhm.
as far as him not like dying of old age, or if it's just extended a good bit. You know, like he could be from like Umbar fairly recently
Hmm.
in Lord of the Rings, but I don't know.
And like in the books, he's just a man, right? He doesn't look all freaky.
Um, I think that he was pretty messed up looking, if I remember right. But yeah, I don't think that he was probably as freaky looking as in the movies.
I don't recall. It's been a long time since I've read the books. But this is
In the
making me
original
want to do
plan
again.
for when they were designing that character for the movie, they originally were planning on having his mouth actually be sideways, like rotated like 90 degrees,
Uh,
and then they decided that that was like too weird looking, and so they didn't do that particular CGI.
just make it a little bigger.
Yeah, just make it like
That's all we need.
strangely large.
I think Molly and I both. Oh, okay. I can hear again. I don't think I have any other questions. I was going to ask about the Greenwood, and that's eventually Mirkwood, right?
Yeah, that starts being called Mirkwood after Sauron goes there as the necromancer and starts like spreading darkness and werewolves and giant spiders around.
When does that happen?
Oh, much later.
That's like the Hobbit, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's before the Hobbit, but not like a whole lot before the Hobbit relative to other things that are happening in the show.
Okay. Well, I don't have any other questions, so I guess we can just make some predictions about the season finale. For a while, I thought there were 10 episodes in this season, so I was kind of, I think 2 weeks ago, I realized there were only 8, and I was like, oh, damn, we're almost
Yeah.
done.
Each episode is so
feels-
long, though. They get a lot done.
That is true.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And they have got a lot done, but it also feels like there could be a whole other 7, 8 episodes of stuff because like I have no idea how season is going to end.
Yeah, I think that when they get back to Numenor, I think I think that Farazan is going to start making like moves to try to take more power for himself, especially with Miriel coming back blind and everything.
Hmm.
So if we even get any scenes from Numenor next episode, we might not really see much Numenor next episode because they're kind of wrapped up at this point with what they were trying to do, kind of backfiring and everything.
Yeah.
I could see the next episode mostly being about like the Stranger and Durin and Elrond, and the Harfoots.
Mm.
But who knows?
Do you think we will get like a look? This is Sauron, kind of a big neon sign that the characters won't know, but something for the audience to be like, okay,
Maybe. I mean, if it is the Stranger, like I kept saying, like I keep thinking, it's possible that if the cult of Melkor or whatever they are catches up with him and does whatever they're going to try to do, maybe he like remembers his name and says that it's Anatar or something like that. Could happen. Or
okay.
if it's Halbrand, maybe he gets there and he tells them that's his name, like his elvish name or something that they can call him. I don't know.
I've seen a lot of people talk about the rings. Obviously, the show is called Rings of Power. How far away do you think we are from seeing the rings being cast?
It depends, because if it's one of the if Sauron is one of the characters that we've already been introduced to, then it's probably not going to happen next episode because we'll need Anatar to somehow get in contact with Celebrimbor, teach him how to make rings of power, and do it. I think that it's possible that we could get Celebrimbor like showing like, here's my plan of what I'm going to do, since we couldn't get a like truckload of mithril from the dwarves. I'm going to make these rings or something like that, and like have like a drawing of some rings or something, and him show Elrond his plan. But the only way that I can really see that happening is if it turns out that like Sauron is a completely like off-camera presence that we just haven't gotten to see yet. Which is possible because like Adar said that he was going around trying to heal Middle-earth's hurts. Like maybe he's just been in Eregion this whole time and we just haven't seen him yet. I don't know.
It feels like getting to the rings next episode, I feel like there needs to be more build up to it. Showing off designs or ideas somehow, I think that'd be fine. But if at the end of the episode it's just like, hey, we made a bunch of rings, I feel like you'd be jumping a bunch of steps of describing how important it is.
I agree that it feels more like a second season thing.
Mm-hmm. But it is kind of weird because the show is named Rings of Power. So.
Yeah. But it's like how they came to be created, and so like I get it. But
it would be nice to have at least a nod towards where it's going.
Yeah. Kind of like the Balrog.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that we could take a significant step towards that. Even if it happened like halfway into the next season. So what would you say are the big events that still need to happen before the Last Alliance?
Like the end of the second. You mean like the actual Last
the
Alliance?
End of the series,
Alliance?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the rings have to be forged. That's like the big one. Sauron has to go back to Mordor and like openly establish himself as like the Lord of all of Mordor. The Númenóreans have to come back, capture him, take him back to Númenor. Like, I don't know. Some of this ends up being like spoilers if people haven't read the books.
Oh, that's true.
But I mean, there's a lot of things that have to still happen before the Last Alliance.
Yeah, I guess they need to start zipping through it then. How long?
I mean, there are. I feel like there are 5 seasons of show that like 4 more seasons of show that they can do without having to.
I'm saying it sounds like that there are more than that potentially. Like I know they're only doing 5, but it seems like just from what little you've described, it feels like they need to start checking off some boxes.
Yeah, and I kind of stopped partway through there because I felt like I was spoiling things.
Yeah, it's like a season 4 thing.
Yeah, I really want to see more of like Lyndon and Eregion. I feel like we haven't seen a whole lot of like Gil-galad and Celebrimbor.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that we'll probably get more of them once we're actually getting to like the Rings of Power of this show. But I do want to see more of them because they're kind of important characters.
Mm-hmm. This definitely feels possible, something like that. But it would feel weird to not have had Anatar or a character throughout the season to have that revelation. But maybe it is an elf that's just been like hanging around in all of the the previous scenes.
Maybe we'll get a moment where it's like we get like an Agatha moment. It was Agatha all along, but
it was Anatar all along.
He starts singing and kills a puppy, and
I do kind of like that suggestion because it would also explain like, oh, Celebrimbor's been talking to this guy for a while. He probably also suggested the giant tower forge project in the first place. You know, it makes sense.
Yeah, I think that can work.
Yeah.
But
but we know that he can't go ahead and just make the elven rings because at least one of them is made out of mithril, and they don't have any mithril yet. So
Elrond has a good chunk.
No, he left
gave that back.
He did give it back.
Oh wait, I think he did walk out with it.
Did he?
I think he did. He left it with Durin.
Yeah.
Because I had been thinking
before
he gave it back to Durin, I had been thinking like maybe Elrond's going to hold on to this, and this is going to be the piece of mithril that becomes one of the 3 elven rings.
That makes sense now. And I do like that the storylines are starting to converge more and more. Like we're going to get Halbrand and Galadriel probably meeting up with Gil-galad and Elrond and Celebrimbor. Like if everyone just converges on Eregion. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Well, and in the books, Sauron like hates Gil-galad a lot. And like Gil-galad Gil-galad and Galadriel are 2 of the people that never trust Anatar from the beginning. And so I'd be interested to see if they actually do portray that in the show.
Yeah, that would be another reason for it to not be Halbrand.
Yeah. All
right.
But yeah. I'm also really curious to see what they do with Khazad-dûm, because like going by the timeline from the books, the Balrog shouldn't wreck Khazad-dûm until like after the Last Alliance.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's later. So I'm curious. They'll probably move that up. I'm thinking, but you know, I would like to see the dwarves be part of the Last Alliance though, also because I think they were supposed to be.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, they just weren't really shown off in the prologue. There weren't very many of them there. If I'm remembering right, maybe I'm thinking of a different thing from the books, but
I wish there were more dwarven characters that we are getting to know a little bit more, because right now it's really just Durin, his father, and his wife. Everybody else is just kind of there.
It feels like outside of the Hobbit, dwarves don't really get the spotlight very much.
Yeah, I want to see more of the singing to the mountain thing. That was really cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
Also, yeah, there's a lot of story with the dwarves that happens like off screen, like during Lord of the Rings, that I was always sad we didn't get to see. Like in the Lord of the Rings, there's actually a messenger that gets sent from Mordor that offers them the 3 still existent dwarven rings that Sauron had recovered, if they would help him find Bilbo, and bring him the One Ring. And they were like refused to help and all this. Like there is some cool dwarven storyline stuff that happens in like the later story that we just don't see.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good stopping place for today's episode, and we'll have the season finale on this coming Friday, and then we'll talk about it next Sunday as well, just like this time, 6 p.m. Eastern. Yeah. Thanks everyone for watching along. Ashton, would you like to plug Slam Sector? Because you're on it tomorrow, right?
Oh yeah, I'll be on Slam Sector tomorrow. We're actually playing the 40K themed Magic the Gathering set that just came out. We're gonna play a 4-player commander game of that, so that'll be fun. That's Slam Sector. I want to say we're doing that at sometime in the evening. I think like 7 o'clock or something. I don't know. Not really sure.
Well, I have a link to the channel in the description, so people can check it out. If you're Warhammer fans, our friends over at Slam Sector have started a new channel, and they're streaming every Monday. But that's it for us today. Molly and I will be back on Wednesday for No Ifs and or Buts to talk about Andor episode 6 and the end of the second arc. But yeah, that's it. Thanks everyone for watching. And I forget what were we supposed to say last week? That's like, instead of "May the Force be with you," and then Molly said something dumb and I hit end.
Oh. That's how we should end all of our streams.
Molly, it's something dumb.
May you always have exploding seeds planted within your wounds.